So this is going to be my reaction to Dexter Original Sin Season 2. It's cancellation news. I talk about Dexter a lot. So if anyone cares about, you know, this journey of Dexter that I've recorded and talked about, then I know a lot of people would wonder, like, hey, what about, what's your opinion on Season 2? What do you think about that? Well, um, I watched season one and I really liked it. Really liked Original Sin, and I thought they did a really great job. It was nice to get like a refreshment of like baby Dexter going through his stuff as like an amateur and everything, and just learning how to do things, some mistakes, and I liked the family dynamic of the show also, and learning about the backstory and learn knowing about the backstory and then seeing it really helped make a creation or not a creation create a connection between us audience members and the show and the story of the show. And it's like, yeah, the show's going here, and we as the fans know where it's going. And so it's like a part of us, we're with the show watching it all happen. And it was nice. It was nice really seeing how everything unraveled in such a way. I know a lot of people did have some issues or problems with certain, I guess, plot holes that they pointed out. And, when you looked at Dexter's kill list, it said one thing. And then when Original Sin came out, some things were changed. And it was like, oh man, what was the kill list looking like the last few years before Original Sin came out? Who were the first few victims originally? And then people were thinking about Dexter, the early cuts and stuff like that. And a lot of people were like, "What about LaGuardia's memories at the end of this?" And it was like a lot of people were pointing some stuff out, and I'm sure that was there on purpose for a reason. And I remember talking about this in my recording for, I believe, season 7 of Dexter with LaGuardia, and there was a scene that always stuck out to me in that season, and it was a scene when Matthews was talking to LaGuardia and I believe he mentioned the connection with the ice truck killer and Dexter and everything. And LaGuardia was like, "Wait a minute, the ice truck killer, that was Rudy, that was Dexter's brother." And I remember her reaction to that, which was that was Dexter's brother. There was something weird about her face when she said that. Like she knew that something was there and she knew there was a connection and it bothered her, but she didn't quite put the pieces together properly. And the way that the actor acted that out, that line out, it always stuck out to me since the first day that it aired and I watched it. And then the rest of the show happened and years went by, and I was rewatching the DVDs and I'm like, they're never going to address this. They're never going to address this little tiny thing. It probably never bothered anyone else in the world except for me. That LaGuardia's the actor delivered that line in such a weird way. And then when Original Sin came out and we got to the finale, and then I remembered that scene and I was like, oh, okay. Are these dots, are they connected, or am I reach? I don't know, but there was just always something like Guerta knew that there was some kind of connection there, and then so but so I think that there's a lot in the Dexter universe that we haven't explored yet that we really would love to explore. Of course, with Original Sin, we had Bobby, and a lot of people were like, "Wait, what about Davy Sanchez?" Then we're like, "When did Dokes come in?" Which I believe Dokes came in. It was like 6 years after Dexter was on the force, so it would have been like a 6 year gap before Dokes showed up. Something like that. I believe Dexter and Dokes only worked together for maybe 2 to 4 years before the first season. So, it'd be a pretty big age jump. But then everyone was wondering what about Matthews? Where was Matthews? And When did Vogel show up? So there was a lot of material that could have been put in the original Sin season two, or maybe even a future season. So yeah, so my opinions. So when they announced season two, honestly, I didn't think it was actually going to happen because the announcement of season two being confirmed happened on April Fool's Day. So my first thought was, oh, this is just an April Fool's joke that season two got renewed. But then a couple days went by, then a week went by, and I'm like, they haven't said April Fools yet. They haven't said April Fools. So what's going on? And then I figured after a couple weeks went by, I was like, you know what? I bet they had renewed it for season two, or they did it as a joke. But then after a while, they were like, wait a minute, did we make a mistake? And so they just held off on it and was like, you know, it's probably a bit too late, now to say this was an April Fool's joke. A couple of weeks went by now. And so they're probably just waiting, like, let's just kind of hold off on that. We'll put it on the back burner. We'll deal with it later. But, it was always supposed to be an April Fool's joke, but the punchline never came out. And we waited so long. So honestly, that was my first thought, was that at some point they were going to come up with some excuse, which is why the second season wasn't going to happen because it was renewed on April Fool's Day. Oh, yes, April Fool's Day is April 1st, right? Or is it April 4th? No, it's July 4th, April 1st. Yeah. So, yeah, so that was my first thought. And so I was like, you know what? I'm not going to believe it until I actually see it because I don't believe that season two is going to happen. I believe it was an April Fool's joke that just stretched out way too long and no one announced it right away. And it just, I don't think it was ever going to happen. But I still had some hopes, that was going to happen, but it never did. So I know a lot of people are upset about it. And I have some theories as to why the show may have been renewed and may have gotten canceled. And this goes against, what some of the producers, what I've heard, some of the producers have said. But when you are making, so I heard, so when you're making this series of Dexter, it is very difficult to maintain the psychological aspect of the show. And so I believe that they did want to focus on resurrection more than original sin. There was also some talks about Trinity having his own show, and I heard Brian having his own show. That the ending of Original Sin was actually altered for a possible spinoff for Brian, and I think that would be nice. It'd be interesting to actually see this universe expand in such a way. And I think the studios or the companies or whatever are like, nah, maybe we should just focus on Resurrection, keep Resurrection strong. But yeah, so trying to keep up with the psychological part of the Dexter series, that's its strong point. That's the strong point of the series, and I think trying to balance that out in multiple ways may be a bit much. Also having Dexter Resurrection on, Original Sin off, Dexter Resurrection season 2 on, Original Sin season 2, going back and forth and having a constant flow of Dexter, of one show airing, and then when it stops airing, you have another show in the same one that picks up right when the first one ends. I think the studios are maybe worried that there might be a burnout also. So, oh, there's too much Dexter. Then after a while, people won't appreciate it because there's just too much being thrown out there, too much being produced. And also that may mess with the quality. Another theory may be, like I said, with the psychological aspect of it, that's very hard, it's very difficult. So how do you keep up with the psychological side of the series, especially in Original Sin? There's always been a formula since the first season, or maybe more of the second season, but there's always been a formula with the show, and so it's difficult to maintain that formula, especially when you're doing a prequel. It's like, how much more can you actually explore? How many more interesting ideas can you have? But how do you do it in such a way where you're not seeming like you glorify the killings and being a killer and things like that? It's very hard to try and do what they've done with the Dexter character, similar to what they've done with Jigsaw in the Saw series after Saw 2. And it's like, it's hard to kind of, do that to your serial killer character. Put them, and, I think it was in Britain, I believe, and or maybe England or something. Dexter was actually canceled after the second season, first or second season, because it was a show about Dexter killing other serial killers, but they said morally he's still a killer himself, and they can't squint their eyes to be like, we can't find some excuse as to why it's all right. So that whole moral thing, which I think is another reason why they didn't want to mess around with that, which is kind of silly, but some companies think that way. And so they decided, nah, let's not push that. Let's not poke at that bear. Let's just be careful with what we're doing now, you know, with Resurrection So I hope that they don't go that route and they don't cancel the Trinity TV show. We need that. We need that a lot. We need to expand this universe. We need to do it. I know so many people who watch crime shows about real live murders, real live killers, and they watch this stuff like it's a sitcom. They watch real people dying as entertainment and things like that. And it's like, man, so like once you come out with Dexter, I don't think that's a good excuse just to be like, oh, it's fake, but people might watch it and they might feel compelled. And it's like, nah, you got people watching real murders. So, again, going back to the psychological part, which I guess this can bridge into another topic about it, which is what if, what would happen if we want the show to come back. So, you have to understand that every character in the show somehow symbolizes a piece of Dexter's psyche. But if you keep that in mind, what parts of Dexter's psyche, how much more can you explain or have them interact with each other? And what more can you do with that, especially with a young happy Dexter? Now, once you understand what Dexter represents in his own world, what Deb represents in his world is a form of humanity, his connection to the human world and humanity. And you have LaGuerta, which is more like his internalized focus, which is whatever Dexter's focused on. LaGuerta is basically focused on it, his representation of his focus. And not so when you really think about all the characters around him, if fans, us fans, ever want to make a season two, like a fan fiction or fan scripts, and send them to Clyde Phillips, send them to the studios and say, hey, if you guys are busy with Resurrection and Trinity and anything else, us as fans want this so bad that we will contribute into making interesting ideas and scripts. Now, for the fans who've actually made it this far, if you guys do want to make a script, just keep in mind that there are certain brackets. There are certain causes and effects of the character's actions and the effects it has on the other characters. And when the main character is in a psychological state of mind, the characters that represent that part of Dexter, they will start to experience those, and they will act out whatever it is he's feeling inside. So, so just keep just keep that in mind because yeah, if there are a bunch of fans who want to do it, just write some scripts and just keep the formula in mind that there is a formula, and then try to send it in and see if we can help them out. See if we can help them out. Make a script. Even do a like a petition to bring the show back. I remember there was one website where you do petitions to make different changes in the world, and and the Dexter Original Sin season 2 was actually on the first page. I think it was like number 7 at the time for the highest paid petition. But yeah, so yeah, just keep that in mind. So I think I said everything that I wanted to say about the show. It was an amazing show, and honestly, I think it's a waste of actors. That's the worst thing you want to do in the industry is waste actors. And these actors were born to play these roles. You can't just use them one. You can't just burn them out one time as like a little ember flame. You gotta use them more. Do something more with them. I don't know. Maybe they can do flashbacks and resurrection. I don't know, but Original Sin definitely needs a season 2, even if it is a final season. We definitely need to explore the Dexter universe and explore why we like it, why we enjoy it. If you want some kind of excuse to bring it back, as even producers, Harry dying of a heart attack, do something with that. That maybe someone ended up actually killing him that we don't know of, or something. Maybe one of Vogel's student or patients, or something along the lines of that. Do something with that, and just say, oh, well, someone ended up actually giving Harry a heart attack, or ended up, he wasn't just suicide; it was something else. And maybe Dexter and this other person who connects with Harry, something along the lines of that would be interesting if that was like a Lewis Green thing originally. But so anyway, that's my thoughts on Original Sin season 2, and I still hope that they can bring it back because they need to, and I hope nothing else gets canceled. This hurts us as fans. This kind of hurts our faith now because when something's renewed, it's renewed, and like the fact that at any time it can just be taken away from us, it's like, why do we want to get excited for anything anymore if you're just going to take it away from us? And it's happening way too often, and it's hurting the entire industry at this point. Like we were excited for the new Saw movie. We were excited for, the whole, like the Marvel things that just got canceled. Movies just got canceled. And then it happened with the DC movie with Zack Schneider. And it's like, you guys can't like tell us about stuff and get us excited and say, oh, contracts are good, actors are good. And all of a sudden it's like, we decided to cancel it. It's like, ugh. And I know a lot of people are really getting hurt by that. Fans of every genre, of every series, and now with Dexter and being so successful, it's like now when they say we're getting renewed for a new season, I don't even think as many people are going to be excited now. At this point, we're just like, whatever. If it happens, it happens at this point. And I think if you keep doing that, keep giving us promises and then taking them away, that it's really going to affect how we view these things, how we see our favorite series. And I think that, it's not cool to do that to people, especially people who've grown up with a show like this. after like 20 years. Thank you for listening to this, and you guys have an amazing night.